Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Johngy or Else podcast. I, of course, am who else but Tommy Else. With me, as always, is the man on the beat, coming to us from Skokie, Illinois, from JohnG'sBeat.com, Mr. Jonathan Elizabeth Robleski. How you doing, John?
It's interesting that you chose that name, the first woman's name, typical woman's name. That's my mom's name, my late mother. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, I guess that's why she gave you that name. So here we are, and it is another exciting episode here. And yes, in fact, I'm going to say it. Get ready. 3, 2, 1. This is going to be a good one.
I love it. Steve Harvey. Or I'm sorry, Tommy doing John doing Steve Harvey.
Yes. Today we have a very special guest, the Crimson Vixen. She is a roller derby girl, but not only is she just a roller derby girl, but she is a promoter. She is
entrepreneur.
She is a creative director, if I may be so bold. I am very excited to get to talk to her and learn more about her. You filled me in on her. You brought me in on her story, and I said, yes, let's get her on this show. Let's do this. And I've gotten to attend a few roller derby events in my day through pro wrestling and co-promoting. I can't say that I've gotten to really truly understand how the whole thing works. I know that you are an expert based on your texts to me in the past, demeaning me,
I was not demeaning you. I was
explaining
trying to help
to me. He's like, well, this is so it's a real sport, but they use gimmick names, and it's like, yeah, I've seen roller derby before.
I was trying to help you,
I know.
Move on.
You know, it just anyway. So
well, moving on. Here's a funny story though. When I first heard about the knockouts, I emailed them and asked them about covering the team, and I didn't realize who I was speaking or communicating with. I ended up communicating with the Crimson Vixen, the owner, founder of the Chicago Knockouts. That started the whole thing. And I attended a few of their events. They used to have, I believe in Summit, they had a few events. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, missed the championship game. And they started back up this year. And I went out there October, saw the last bout before the championship game. So it'll be like the semifinals. And then the championship bout is November 19th. Yeah. Now, before we bring her on, though, I have to give you this challenge. You have to come up with a roller derby name for yourself by next show.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I am Belton Johngy.
What are you?
Belton Johngy, like Belton John.
Belton
Johngy. Yeah.
Well, I'm positive I can come up with something better than that by the next show, because that's absolutely awful.
Well, actually, it sounds better if you just say Belton John.
It would be, yeah, I guess.
But anyway, let's move on to better things. We've got a lot to talk about with the Crimson Vixen. I think we should just jump right into it.
Let's talk to her now. Okay, so welcoming to the show, the Crimson Vixen.
For the Johngy or Else podcast, welcome into our studios, the Crimson Vixen. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you? It's pretty good for a Monday.
It is. Well, we're ready to talk roller derby. We're excited about talking roller derby.
Real quick.
I do have to warn you, once you start getting me talking about roller derby, you really can't get me to stop. So
that's fine. Hey, we got all night. We'll go all night.
Real quick, I wanna just point out. All right, so I see a few things here. Okay, first off, I see your hair, very orange.
Yes.
I'm digging it. Lipstick on there too. Are we those you know, you look well. You look done up
Oh
there.
gosh.
You know, did you get all dolled up for the podcast here or what? I mean,
Believe it or not, this is actually not my dialed up.
oh my goodness.
This is like going I know it sounds silly, but this is like going to the gym me, because I will during the pandemic when we're all wearing masks, obviously masks don't really get along with lipstick, but generally speaking, I leave the house in red lipstick. So yeah.
Well,
It's
I like that. I like the effort. That's cool.
oh gosh,
Is that is and the other thing I wanted to ask about is that a cat tower you got going on there behind
there
you there?
is.
Oh,
Yep.
beautiful. I'm a cat guy. I've got a little. She's not here right now, but I have a little
She'll make
tabby.
an appearance.
Yeah, she'll probably be around at some point. Her name's Lily. So, yeah, I recognize the lifestyle there. So very cool. What's your
What's
cat's
the
name?
oh
I have two cats.
Okay.
So their names are Cinder and Smoke. And
Ooh.
actually, one of them is literally right now.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see what do you got.
Smoke. She
Ooh.
is. I actually adopted them both. Oh goodness, she does not feel like hanging out with me. So this is perfect. You can see the big floofy tail, and then her brother is Cinder. So they're both rescues, and we've had them since gosh, it's already been over a year, which is hard to believe.
Yeah.
wow.
Mine's mine's just over 2 years. So yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, I'm kind of close by you and everything. So anyway, sorry. I just was, you know, I
That's right.
saw
I'm just excited to talk roller derby.
all right,
So,
John, go
You've
for
got
it. I
two
mean,
cat people here. You have to be patient.
well,
yeah.
don't get me wrong. I was a cat person too. I've had cats,
Yes, he is.
except for the last couple of years. I've had cats mostly my entire life. So I'm
Good
in the
stuff.
middle right now. But
I knew you were good people. I know both of you were good people.
well, me more than Tommy. But you know that's his problem. But you are the founder of the Chicago Knockouts.
Yes,
Tell
I'm the
us
founder.
how and why you did that.
Oh gosh, yeah. So it's a little bit. There's a good amount of story to it, much like anybody who's found roller derby. So I actually started roller derby sometime between 2012 and 2013. And when I started it, I, like many people, saw with it associated roller derby with two things that in my life I had loved so much. One being theater and performance. I did musical theater. I sang and did some stuff with music. And then on the flip side, when I was a kid, I was still very much resentful about the fact that I was told that I couldn't play tackle football because I was a girl. That never went away. That was a chip
Yeah.
still on my shoulder. So when I saw what roller derby was, I just thought it was this perfect combination of these two things that I just completely spoke to me. So I loved it immediately, and I basically dove in. I got into a boot camp with a local team. Pretty soon, I knew some people that were actually starting up their own team called the Vindicated Vixens, which, funnily enough, I actually did pick my name before I joined that team, but then it became it became a really natural fit. And by that time, like 2013, 2014, roller derby had, for the most part, kind of gone more the like serious sport route than the more theatrical route, which is awesome and super cool and super it's a great thing all around. But it was definitely that thing where I found it. It wasn't what I exactly expected, but I still loved it, and I still jumped in with both feet. And pretty soon, I was actually managing the Vindicated Vixens. I was coaching. I was learning to referee. I kind of took on that. How can I basically learn as much about this as I can and be able to fill any role? But I would say, goodness, probably about 2016, 2017 is when I started thinking to myself, what if though the kind of roller derby that I was looking to find did exist? Like, what if I just did it? I started talking about it with my friends. And the funny thing that I kind of kept secret is when I originally found roller derby around that 2012, 2013, I did think to myself after watching with it, well, surely Chicago, being one of the big cities in the United States, must have a bank track, and we didn't. And the website for basically being able to pay the person who's modern making bank tracks still existed. And I looked at the price tag and I was thinking to myself, gosh, like, what if I just, is it this, like, if I build it, they will come kind of situation? I was still so small and so new in the sport that I didn't take the risk. But that many years later, I was looking at what I was already doing and thinking, you know what, I think I can probably do this. And I think, talking to my friends, they seemed excited about that same kind of roller derby, the rough and tumble, the fights, the costumes, the big personalities, and the showmanship. And so I took the leap. I started, I came up with the idea for, came up with the name, the teams, the rule set, just really built it from the ground up. Got a lot of feedback from friends, and officially launched in 2018. And so there's been a lot of exciting stuff that's happened since then. But that's the story of the creation of Chicago Knockouts.
I can relate to a lot of that, and John could attest to this, that when I got involved with professional wrestling, I came in a very, like, the lowest level, and, you're street teaming and putting out, flyers and trying to get people to come to the show and get posters out, things like that, picking up, some of the talent at the airport, things like that, you kind of start building up. But as you go through it, you start learning all of the intricacies and the ins and outs of what it takes to put on a show, and inevitably built up to where I was there helping manage the shows and get everything to go off, as smoothly as possible, and I learned all the aspects of it. And it sounds like you kind of came in and you just kind of learned it, and then you were just like, okay, so if I was going to do my version of it, how would I do it? And that's something that I think a lot of people in my situation also find themselves in, and that John and I have, in many conversations speculated before, like, say, if he and I were to, say, promote a show, a wrestling show of some sort or something like that, how would we go about doing it, knowing what we know, learning from the mistakes of others and things like that. But what's cool about that for you is that for you get to put your own creative uh, influence into it and put your own spin on things. So how do you feel like yours is different than your standard roller derby?
Yeah, so there's a couple key ways, and much like you said, I felt like the experience of being able to be part of the roller derby that is contemporary, I'll call it contemporary roller derby. We could get into the weeds of, the WFTDA rule set and all that, but that's not really as, if we're talking about what modern roller derby is very technical. It's more start and stop. It's I would say that the rules are take a little bit more to understand. When I was doing that style of roller derby, I guess what I started thinking about was how the motto of modern roller derby is for the skaters, by the skaters, which I think is fantastic. And it's the reason that so many people find so much joy in modern roller derby is because it's very membership driven, and it's very much focused on allowing people to find something that's going to really empower. I always hate defaulting to that term because I feel like it's so overused. I mean, everybody talks about how roller derby is so
But
empowering.
if it is, then it is. I mean,
yeah, and I think it gives people a lot of strength. I think it gives people self-definition. So the focus has very much been on the skaters. What I think became lost in that along the way, around 2010 or so, because what I'm doing actually is not very different from what modern roller derby looked like in 2001 when it came back. From like 2001 to about 2008, it looked pretty much exactly like what we're doing. A lot of leagues had dropped fights by I think 2006 is when they were outlawed in the main major rule set. So I'm really, I will say, I'm very much drawing from what already existed, especially when it comes to anything throughout that period, but also going back to the mid-century version of roller derby. I mean, the thing about roller derby is that its heyday, its actual like really big cultural consciousness moment was in the mid 20th century, like it started in 1935, I would say through the 50s and the 70s is when it was really going strong. So as far as where roller derby kind of took a turn was in around 2010, it became a lot more technical and strategic in a way that wasn't necessarily as engaging for the spectators. Like, it was very engaging for the skaters, but it wasn't as engaging for the spectators. So one of the biggest things that I took coming out of that type of roller derby was, how can we make this both fun and exciting for spectators and skaters alike, like making sure that everybody's having a good time. And so I guess in terms of some things that like I said, I really mapped a lot on what already existed. I wanted to make it so that somebody who came out, even if they didn't necessarily understand what was going on, right? Because the thing that a lot of times confuses or throws a lot of spectators, the first thing they ask is like, oh, well, where's the ball? How do you score the points? But even even if they're not exactly grasping all the particulars of what's going on, they can watch it, generally get what's happening, understand where action meets consequence, and just find it very exciting, just straight off the bat. So that was one piece that I think like it's hard to like pick one part of it in particular to say like here's one thing I changed, because it was also coming systemically from this perspective of what draws a spectator to roller derby? How do we draw more people to want to come and see this to make it truly a spectator sport?
You're trying to tell a story, and that's very much in line with like what we do in pro wrestling and stuff. And it sounds like to me like you're trying to stay true to the roots of roller derby, but you also want to incorporate the theatrics that draw the crowd into the event. So with that, what do you do, say, in a game that, I mean, like, you have characters, you have your own names, you've got your own gimmicks and everything. Um, what do you do to try to draw the people in beyond just the simple, or not simple, but the athletics of it?
Yeah, I would say, gosh, these are very good questions. So yeah, there is really very much the layers of sport and theatrics, and something that what's cool and exciting is this season we've been able to partner with multiple local wrestling promotions. So that's Ileana Pro Wrestling, and also oh my goodness, Wrestle League, both of those promotions, and
Mhm.
both of them have ended up in us having some wrestlers that come in and actually help referee, which is really, really phenomenal because they know exactly what to do and how to break up a fight.
Yeah.
Something that they've said and pointed out, which has been really cool, is that they've said it's a really nice blend. That they see where the wrestling aspect comes in, that narrative, and then they also see how the sport aspect of it. It's like
Yeah.
it's a really nice hybrid. And so I would say the on the narrative side of it, getting the audience engaged. There's multiple things I would say, and multiple lessons learned I've even had throughout the time of running Chicago Knockouts. Making sure that, because for example, fights, right? Fights can happen pretty spontaneously. And using that as a clear example, there was a bout actually before the long break due to COVID, where we had a lot of people that were so excited to fight that they were happening almost every other jam. There is a point of oversaturation. There's a point in which
Sure.
the audience loses sight of whatever stakes there might be.
Right.
So things that like I implemented in kind of right away. One being that there needs to still be rules. There needs to still be rules. Like, for example, when somebody cheats or somebody fights somebody, they need to go to the penalty box. Like, if they don't, and it just seems like a free for all, the audience is going to lose interest. They're not going to feel like there's a reason or a rhyme to anything, and they're not
Right.
going to feel like they need to care so much.
If there's
So
the possibility of a fight in any given game, then it loses its specialness. It's like you
yeah,
just it's better to space that stuff out so that, like, when it does happen, it means way more. But if you just do it all the time, it just waters it down and it doesn't mean the same thing anymore.
exactly. And making it so that in terms of there being, I talk a lot about storytelling. I talk about pacing and I talk about storytelling.
Mhm.
Pacing being more the making sure that when we do have fights, if we want that reaction to hit, there needs to be build up. There needs to be build up. There needs to be space to allow for that build up, and then the build up needs to come through actual interaction that builds its way towards that big kind of, oh, all right, now they've snapped, now they're at each other, now they're not even
Right.
caring about the game
Mhm.
that's going on around them, they're just
Yep.
going to take it all out on each other. So when we kind of talk about that, we talk about making sure that we're making sure that if that somebody else is your rival, because we have pretty set rivalries, making sure that there's opportunities for us to actually skate against each other and start bugging each other, and throw an elbow or throw a hit, those kinds of things. So
That's
making sure that it's a cohesive thing.
Yeah. This is all like pro wrestling psychology 101. Like, you could put together, like, if I gave you like two guys and their characters and told you what their backgrounds were and said, put the match together, I think, and John, correct me if you think
Oh,
I'm wrong.
she would nail it.
I think you do
Absolutely.
like everything you're
Shucks.
well, no, seriously. Everything you're saying is exactly the way that it works. It's the little things that lead up to the bigger moments that finally are a big payoff at a certain point. It's the slow build that brings up that just, fireworks display at the end where everything pays off and the crowd goes home happy. I mean, like you've got that mentality like to a T. I mean, like it's almost crazy that you are not somehow in pro wrestling.
That
And
no, that I really take that to heart. That means a
I
lot. And I mean, something that I even did throughout, going, I make it my aim to study as many proxy as possible. In my day job, I work in technology. So as you can imagine, the value of data and data-driven analysis has been drilled into me, from all points. So a lot of what I mean, I even started watching WWE a few years ago to just kind of get a sense of, I'd watched it as a kid, but I hadn't watched it as an adult.
right.
So I will say that, there's a lot that I'm drawing from that probably is just from me kind of being that, third person sort of looking at how others have done it and making sure that I'm incorporating that into, not reinventing the wheel, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, the last match, it wasn't the championship; it was to get to the championship.
Yes.
Then you were kind of building it with Beetlejuice,
Oh yeah.
and then that
Yeah,
kind of
Beetlejuice.
exploded near the end.
Yeah. I think, so there was actually, so it was me. So I built a little bit with Beetlejuice, just a bit. The person I ultimately ended up fighting was Boss. That was
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. She was dressed like Poison Ivy, right? Yeah. So
Right.
she and I have a longtime rivalry. Beetlejuice is actually new to the league. She's a transfer, but yeah, we'll see more from her next time. Not to spoil anything for next shot or anything, but yeah, Boss and I definitely. I mean, she and I have very similar skating styles, so we tend to we're kind of a natural kind of fit for a rivalry.
Can you talk to that real quick? Because first of all, I cannot skate to save my life. So I mean, I can get around in a circle, I guess, but I mean, like when it comes to stopping, I just slam into the wall. So, but like,
give me an hour with you one day, and I've got, I will say,
I'll take it.
To put a plug in, I actually,
you can film it, yeah.
No, we'll both be out
it'll
there.
be this next special spinoff segment. I basically run, actually it's on break right now, but I run a nonprofit organization called Freewheeling. And the aim is to have open, free skate classes for anybody who wants to come. They can just show up. I actually have a whole stock of rental skates to find in the roller rink.
That's awesome.
So if you ever want to come out, there's no reason for you not to.
Well,
but
we might just have to do that. But my question is, so how do similar skating styles complement each other? Like, is it like, how does that, it works better for you to have similar skating styles, I guess, is what you're saying?
I feel like sometimes it's nice to have that reflection back and forth, but it's also great to have contrast. I think either one can work really, really fantastically well. We've got skaters like Marley Quinn, who's very she's got a figure skating background, right? So her whole thing is just speed and getting around people and finding those edges that somebody thinks, oh, I didn't leave her enough space for her to get through. I'm in position, I can block her, and she takes that inch that you left. I would say, then on the other hand, you've got skaters that are very, very much just complete wrecking balls. They're coming in and their whole skill set. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and there's almost too many different types of skill sets. One of the beautiful things about roller derby is that it's difficult to actually put people in categories, is that, it's very possible, I feel, for people of different skating skill sets and different combinations to be able to play different positions. And the beauty in that is that you get the unexpected. It's not necessarily, oh, all jammers are this way, all jammers are, I'm thinking of other sports, right? Like a forward in basketball is generally going to be on the shorter side. Linebacker is going to be one of the bigger guys on the field, but like for roller derby, you've got this variety, which is fantastic. I would say for myself, I'm like somewhere in the middle in terms of how much I hit and how much I try and use my speed, which is always what I've tried to use to my advantage because it gives me a little bit of a wider toolkit.
How tall are you?
I am 5'7", so which I think is pretty much just average.
Uh,
No,
I don't know.
obviously,
I
No?
think that's kind of that's. I don't know. I think that's kind of
On
tall.
the taller
well, for
side?
the
Well,
league.
For the
Yeah.
league, yeah. For the league,
Yeah.
I'm actually, funnily enough, one of the taller people.
yeah.
We definitely have people that are taller than me, but I think I am on the taller side. Now that you're saying it, I'm usually the one that takes the knee in photos.
Yeah.
No, obviously we can tell how you got your name and how you came about it, but I know in other roller derby leagues, they have to register their name. Is that the same for the knockouts?
Oh,
Like,
that's
could
a great
somebody else
question.
have your name somewhere else?
So when everything started out back in 2001, I don't know exactly when the list was generated, but somebody decided somewhere along the way that needed to be a registry so that people were duplicating, which was a great idea at the time because it was small enough, and it was a domain name called twoevils.com/something something. I actually used to have it saved to my phone because by the time I had joined, I joined basically right when it fell into disuse because whoever was running it wasn't on top of it anymore. You used to have to submit your name and there was a waiting period because someone was doing this all manually. At a
Wow.
certain point, I think everybody just got to the place in roller derby where there was so many people playing roller derby that how would we possibly keep track? So at this point, generally speaking, when you join a team, you wouldn't pick a name that somebody else has, but if somebody's got your name 2 states away, it happens sometimes at this point. Within our league, we don't have duplicate names just because we want the characters and be unique and distinct.
Oh, sure. No, the last, like I mentioned, the last night, the last bouts, you guys call them bouts. The last bouts
Yes.
you had was to get to the championship. So the championship is
Yes.
actually Saturday, November 18th, I believe.
19th, yes.
19th, Saturday, November 19th. So what could people expect that night? That's the big game. That ends the season for you guys.
It does. And so, and there's actually, funnily enough, an exciting bonus thing happening at the end of this season that is historic that I can talk about in a moment, but let's focus on the title for now because that trophy is huge and we all want it. So unfortunately, my team, the Retro Rumblers, we lost to the Random Conquerors in that last bout, meaning that we don't get to advance. The Crushers, the comic book Crushers in blue, they already had their position solidified because they were the only team in this season to go undefeated. So we already knew they were going to be in the title. It was just a matter of who between the Horrific Haunters in green and the Retro Rumblers in red were going to win. And the Haunters beat us by, I think, like 2 points or something.
No, but can I interrupt you real quick? At the end of that game, I mean, I followed it. I'm understanding the rules on that. At the end of the game, there was a lot of confusion.
There was confusion. So we had a little bit of trouble with the scoreboard, and it led to some of the referees deliberating, which we actually really try to avoid. We make the officiating and the like stats keeping for the game as simple as possible to avoid that very thing, but sometimes it happens. So what happened was, I believe it was between two different people saying there might have been an extra minute on the clock. There might have been, it might have run during a timeout, meaning that we should have had an additional jam at the end of the game. And then there wasn't, and there was confusion about points because I think there was confusion about where it went up on the scoreboard. So at the end of the day, basically the referees came to both teams and asked, okay, do we want to just skate another jam to settle it? And both teams agreed to that. So that was the way that we handled it in that instance, just to, to figure out, we couldn't quite determine what had happened, but everybody was a little confused. So rather than end on a note of confusion, we wanted to end on a note of excitement.
Well, it got the crowd revved up. That crowd was insane and quite
yeah.
large. I mean, there had to be like 300 people there.
Oh gosh, well, so our capacity is actually 250. And funnily enough, that night you were there, that was a low crowd for us. That was the lowest crowd we've had so far this season. And we attribute it to the fact that it was like an 85-degree day out that day.
True.
Likely the last one.
Well, either way, that's great. I mean, hey, who cares? I mean, they 85 degrees or not, they came to see you guys. They spent their time and money to come and spend with you guys. So, I mean, that's awesome.
Well, they were loud. That was the thing about it. When I found out later, I was like, oh, wow, we were a little lower tonight, but you couldn't tell coming into the, because we're in what we call the dungeon of the venue. It's our like dressing room area. We're down there while the crowd's coming in. So the first look we get at the crowd is literally when we skate out. So I had no idea. It was so loud in there that I couldn't tell the difference. I was like, oh, wow, we must have sold out. So
that's awesome.
What's really cool is, we tend to get a lot of energy. And this is only the interesting thing about this season is that we both, we moved locations, and these are our first bouts we're having in over 2 years. Our last bout prior to COVID was actually scheduled the weekend everything shut down. So we weren't even able to have our title bout, that championship bout that season. And since then, obviously, I honestly used that break time to really just look at what I wanted the things to look like going forward. We found this magnificent venue, the Homewood Auditorium, which was basically sitting mostly empty until we started talking with the Homewood Arts Council about what we were looking to do there. So it's been, understanding, or trying to kind of build an audience following there, or like just get the word out. But mainly this last 6 months for me as the league operator has been proof of concept. Is this going to work here? And it seems like the answer is resoundingly yes. So I'm very excited for next season as a result.
That's awesome.
And lots of good restaurants right there too, by the way.
Say it again.
Lots of good restaurants right around there too.
Oh yeah, restaurants, bars. It's a really nice little downtown walkable area, which is even better.
I know what the difference is, when you get a crowd where they're just really loud, regardless of the numbers. Like if they're loud, that means they're excited, they're into it, they're giving their energy, and it just like gives you just like an adrenaline rush to where you will do whatever you have to please that crowd. So I know how exciting that can be. That's very cool. I'm glad for you guys.
So for the championship coming up, other than the actual bout, what could fans expect? I mean, the last game, I think you guys had an after party somewhere. I know that you mingle with the fans right on the track after the game, because I was mingling with you guys. So what could people expect for the championship bout?
So we'll have both of our mainstay vendors back. So that's Rabid Brewing with the beers, and Bizarro and Son with their tamales. Rabid Brewing, by the way, you mentioned the after party. I definitely want to throw some, business their way. They're only they're right there in Homewood, basically, and that's actually where we go for the after party. So we absolutely encourage people to come there afterwards and grab a beer, hang out for a bit. In terms of what fans can expect, it's just a really hard fought bout, because everybody, I mean, this is it, right? Like this is the one for the championship trophy, and neither of these teams have ever won it before. We've had this is our third season.
Big stakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the Crushers definitely coming out undefeated, I think are both going to have a good sense of confidence, but also a lot of, we want to cap off this season with the win. We want to cap off completely undefeated, because that's huge. I don't think any Chicago knockouts team, I would have to go back and look at my stats, but to my knowledge, no knockouts team has ever finished a season completely undefeated. And the Haunters on the other side, they're the underdogs in this situation. They absolutely want to topple the big dog. So I think it's just going to be, it's going to be all out. Everybody knows this is our last chance to perform at home this season. And we've got Beetlejuice for the Haunters, we've got Marley Quinn for the Crushers, and Marley actually subbed in for the Haunters last time. So what was her teammate in the last bout, just by chance, by subbing in to help fill the roster. Now they're going to be squaring off. So I think it's going to be a really interesting bout.
That's cool. And then see, like I'm sorry. No, I was just going to say that just like that in itself, that's good storytelling right there. I mean, like that's the story right there. So anyway, go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
When do you guys restart then? Because so the season ends now. So when does next season start?
January 28th will be our first bout of the season. And what we do in January actually is something a little different, a little fun. So everybody's still coming back from the holidays at that point. So rather than do like an official season bout, we do something just kind of for fun to open the season. So we haven't picked yet, but it's going to be a theme. We're going to mix up the teams from both rosters. Think something like, oh gosh, I'm trying to come up with an example.
Like an exhibition match of some sort,
It'll be an exhibition match, but with the twist. Here's the twist though. This is the fun part, I think, is that fans can come in and make a small donation and break the rules. So if they want to see two jammers from one team go at the same time, if they want to see everybody do a jam where everyone's skating backwards, they can literally just for kicks. We'll have a list that takes safety into account, because obviously there's some things that would just be a little too outside the realm of possibility. But we're going to try to come up with as many just wild off the wall things that we can that people would want to see maybe. And just the idea is we'll have some people walking around with we'll have some people walking around taking the donations, and then we'll put them into each
That's
channel.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, the other question I have too is, people look at roller derby and they see you guys out there once a month, basically once a month. They don't realize how much you guys actually practice though.
Oh yeah, I can speak to that. So we have 3 practices per week right now. One of which is just pure skating. So skating skills. The thing about roller derby, and I always try to say this, is that it's in everyone's best interest over the course of your roller derby career to continually get as better at skating as you can, because there's really no ceiling. I mean, people who do JV skating, people who do artistic skating know that, there's no point at which you end, you stop learning.
Yeah.
No, gosh, no. I mean, like, you can always get better at it. You can always become more powerful and more strong, more balanced, more graceful on your skates. So that practice, the one per week, is just for skating skills and just for speed and just for strength. And then we have 2 other practices per week that are roller derby contact skills focused. So, we do some scrimmage type stuff, but 3 practices per week. Not everybody's at every single one. We have some commuter skaters, for example. We have somebody who actually commutes all the way from Ottawa, or Ottawa, that's correct. So she's got an hour and a half commute. So she's not there 3 times a week. But outside of that too, we have skaters that do other fitness activities, which we absolutely encourage. Cross training, I feel, is, pretty essential to just keeping your body, prepared and as best as you can, avoiding injury.
Yeah, pro wrestlers do the same thing. We never stop actually training. You always go to practice, and you always, because well, it's any sport. I mean, it's like, football players, don't just go out and play 16 games and then that's it for the year. They're practicing and training the rest of the year, and things like that. So
Absolutely.
it's a lot of time and effort, and that's interesting though that you spend a lot of time on the skating skills. And again, yeah, I agree. Like with anything, you can never practice too much at any, whether it's a sport or an instrument or any given skill. I mean, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. There is no ceiling to it. So I like that approach.
It's all a matter of repetition and hours. And I feel like I'm always I feel like I'm a broken record in terms of just, I say a lot about just, being there, showing up and putting in the work. And that's honestly a really, to me, because I mean, my whole, just personal, journey of work, school, sports, etc. Very much, it's very easy to get focused on the, the achievement, the grade, the results, if you win the
Right.
game. And what I've tried to do throughout that, to even just get myself to a place where I felt like my success was self-defined, is to focus on the work I'm putting in rather than whatever happens at the end of the day.
It's more
Because
about it's about the process.
yep,
It's just like every step you take, and every setback that you encounter, that's where you gain more strength, is when you run into the things that you have to work harder at, or maybe you might struggle through. Those are the things that make you stronger. Those are the things that make you sharper. And the only way to experience all that is to continually try to put yourself in a position of being challenged. So that sounds like
absolutely.
what you're doing there. Yeah.
Now, the only thing, it's not really a question, but just for you to comment on, I was always impressed from the first time I saw you guys before the pandemic a few times.
Yeah.
Your league and your fan base is extremely inclusive. It's like, I always reckon it to like Comic-Cons. Anybody's welcome there and anybody fits in. And I just think that's one of the cool parts of your league.
That is wonderful to hear. I'm really glad to hear you say that unprompted. It's certainly something that I aim for. I think that we could be even more diverse. We certainly aim to be as inclusive as possible and make it clear that we're extremely welcoming to people, all walks of life, all backgrounds. Very, very important, integral thing to just our value set. But it's great to hear that from somebody who's just showing up and doesn't know any of that kind of purpose-driven stuff. So thank you.
No, I mean, it's real evident from the skaters and the fans. It's a really nice mix of people.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think having that diversity in some part of your life is so essential to just being able to be a good human being. So I aim to promote that as much as possible for sure. So I'm glad, super glad to hear that it's sort of panning out that way.
Well, you're totally succeeding on that. The only other question I have is there any way that you could check Steve Arendt a couple of times? No,
Do you know a few?
He's a good dude.
I'm assuming you know him through the wrestling world because we kind of stole him from there.
Yeah, he does some broadcasting I've interviewed him a few times for some wrestling stuff, but he's a good guy. But I still wouldn't mind accidentally a little elbow, just saying.
An accidental sort of on purpose elbow.
If it happens, you might hear a cheer from me. That's all I'm saying.
He's really game for anything. So I think that I would not see that throwing him too bad.
That's true. He is. He's a good dude though. And he'll be there calling the action on November 9th.
Oh, he's phenomenal. Him and Mouthpiece both are regular announcers. It's one of those things where I feel very, very lucky throughout the course of this league, and especially for like, I would say within the last 6 months, there's just been a spike of me just like running into the right people or networking my way to the right people, of like somebody just being like, what, this person would be really good for this. And then I meet that person. I'm like, where were you this whole time? We've needed you. This is perfect. And so, Steve seems to really just be the enthusiasm is what sells it, right? So if you can't, if you can get that on the mic at the levels at which he's able to deliver it, him and Mouthpiece both, like you're golden. So
no, he loves it. I mean, I've talked to him off camera, off recording, and he is nothing but praise for you guys. He loves it there. So
it's so wonderful to hear from somebody as just with such a heart of gold as he has. So I know you might have any more questions left. I was going to say though, the one other thing I did want to mention that's kind of cool and historic. Oh, and there's another piece of this that I don't think we talked about, which is the bank track. I don't know if you guys wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
So roller derby of the 20th century up until 2000. I lie. There was like a brief time, I believe, in Japan that they played flat track in the 90s. But for the most part, flat track roller derby really exploded, in the 21st century. Before that, it was always played on bank track. That was just the surface that roller derby existed on. And it's what drew me to it 100%. And so I mentioned too that, back when I found roller derby, I thought someone in Chicago must have one, and I was proven wrong. So about a year into Chicago Knockouts, I started in 2018, literally a year later in January of 2019 is when, of all tracks, the one that was used in the movie Whip It popped up on eBay. And because I had talked about it, talked about wanting a bank track to everyone I knew, I was at practice when it like exploded, like in our little corner of the internet, kind of went viral in my community. And I received 20 some odd text messages of telling me that happened. And by some, just God's stroke of luck, I was able to actually get it. So it is in Chicago. It is in storage right now. I'm looking for a facility for it. I need about 10,000 square feet, but that is ultimately the move I'm looking to take. So I anticipate for the next 6 months at least, we'll still be at the Homewood Auditorium. Gosh, I wish it were big enough to fit the bank track, but it just does not have the right dimensions.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for a space that I can actually set it up, because I can tell you, if you like our show now, it's
imagine it with the bank track. Yeah.
I mean, it is the big stage. It's unlike anything else. So I'm very excited at the prospect of being able to hopefully find something around the Homewood area as well, since we're starting to kind of roots there and, get some word of mouth going, which is great. So yeah, that's one other note. And then the very last thing is that we did convince a team in Michigan to play by our rule set, which we are the only, the rule set was created for Chicago Knockouts roller derby. I developed it for this league. But I've been training another team out in Flint, Michigan to play by this rule set. So for the very first time, Chicago Knockouts will be playing a bout against another league across state lines.
Wow.
Very cool.
Which is really, we're very excited. It's going to be December 3rd. We're all going to be staying overnight there. And so I think it's going to be just a really great way to cap off the season, even after the title. Hopefully anybody who loses can kind of cool their heads, enough to all of we're all gonna have a great time together. We're really looking forward to it. It'll be cool.
Well, congratulations.
And the season as a league.
That's awesome.
For sure.
That's great. Well, it's been really awesome talking to you, and it's really been insightful, and I appreciate your time and everything. I think it's awesome that you've created an environment, like you said, that's very inclusive. You get to have people who can, show off not only their athleticism but their theatrics as well. And you're giving an environment where people can come together and have a common interest and get to spend time together and have fun and hang out with you guys afterwards. And I know in a different light what that's like, and it is it can be one of the most gratifying things in the entire world. And I'm very happy for you and your success so far, and I wish you even more so going forward.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you both for inviting me on to talk about it. And I appreciate you both and hope to see you at the title maybe.
I am planning on it. I'm going to try to talk this guy into going.
Hey,
I don't think
if you
there's a
like
lot of
wrestling, I think you're gonna like this.
I don't. Yeah, this. He makes it sound like it's like a big, question or
Well, you're
something. But
busy. You're always
Like
busy
he's
with
twisting
things.
it. No, I get it. I get it. I'm one of those people that's just overbooked all the time. So I won't hold against you this time.
well, I will hopefully be there. I will do my best. I promise.
And if not,
I
there's
would
always next season. We've
I will.
got a
Well,
whole schedule.
one way or another, I will be there. It's a matter of which one, but I will definitely come out and see you guys. I would love to see you in action. So
Oh gosh, well, thank you. And thank you again. And I hope you both have a great rest of your night.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And I can't wait to see you guys again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
thank
See you
you.
later.
Take care.
Have a good night. Bye.
And that was the Crimson Vixen. And what a fun, talented, enterprising woman that is.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Really enjoyed getting to know her. You definitely have met her before and gotten to see her in action. I have not, but I have checked my calendar. I am available for that championship night, and
Saturday, November 19th, live in Homewood, Illinois.
yes, and you and I will be there in our Johngy or else podcast shirts.
Well, I don't know. I've got a Chicago Knockouts shirt that I could be wearing to support the league too.
All right. Well, I guess I can let that go for that night, but I'll
Or
represent
maybe I could
us
switch it at
because
halftime.
somebody needs to. So, well, you do whatever you want. It's fine. I'll give you a break on this one. So,
Well, thanks.
but no, really, I mean, like I said, it's interesting, when you hear her talk about you know, understanding the combination of athleticism and theatrics and storytelling in and it's something that is a parallel I've seen in roller derby and pro wrestling before, because in when I was with Resistance Pro, we had co-promoted with
The Aurora 88s.
yeah. And so, that was my first real introduction into seeing roller derby and how it works and everything. And it was like, oh, this is just a slightly different version of what we do, basically.
Right.
It's just, it's like they've got their characters, they've got their rivalries, it's a very physical sport. It does take a great deal of athleticism to pull off. It is not, I mean, and honestly, I question, that they may even be a more dangerous sport in a lot of ways, because I know a lot of people who have broken ankles and knees and things
Well,
like
I mean,
that.
think about it. Like the last bouts I saw were in the Homewood Auditorium, and it was basically a basketball court. And they're skating around, they're doing their oval, and they're flying. I mean, they're not just cruising around.
No,
They're flying
yeah,
around
they
that
move,
thing.
yeah.
And to skate that fast, and so that's not I mean, we're talking about 80 feet maybe, and then when you do the oval, it's even less.
Yeah.
To get that speed and that much smoothness going without flying into a wall or knocking someone over. But it is funny though, when she was talking about the build up to the fight, and I saw that last time. I saw her. I had the wrong name, but I saw her, the opponent, kind of build it up all night, and then there was a skirmish at the end.
Yeah. No, and that's the storytelling. I mean, and that's awesome. I love that. Obviously, you know, in you know what I do, or but I at the same time, it's such a cool parallel that that can exist in a different format and venue, and she's really embraced that. You know, like trying to stay true to the roots of the whole thing, but at the same time honor the attraction of a you know character or a story or a rivalry, you know. I mean, and how that gets the crowd invested into the event, you know, and that's what makes people want to come back and see what happens at the next one, you know. I mean, that's a very it's very very smart. It's very and again, she also gets to exercise her creativity in that as well, you know, and as far as you know helping build that sort of stuff. So I mean, I'm very impressed with this young lady, very
Well,
very
yeah, I
very
mean,
impressed.
think about the accomplishment, right? She got into roller derby, whatever she said, you know, in the mid 2000 or early 2000s. She got in as a skater. From there, she launched her own league, and it's not like a high school league, and there's 10 people.
No, it's a big
There
deal,
was
yeah.
a huge crowd, and she's doing it right. She's got sponsors. She's got an after party. You know, she's doing everything like you and I were talking about how to set up a wrestling
It is,
event.
yeah, very
She's
much
doing the
like
same thing, and
it's all
she's
the stuff
making
we
it
were
happen.
like, yeah, it's all the stuff you and I have said many, many times where it's like, okay, so if we were going to do this, we would make sure we were covered with sponsors. Anything at the gate is extra. Take care of all the you know participants involved. Make sure that they're getting paid and taken care of and everything. If you need to, you can do an after party. You can make money on that, you know, and you could, but you also get to do the interaction with the fans, which you know builds a bigger bond with them, which makes them want to come back and see you again. I mean, it's just yeah, it's all something that on paper sounds very simple. It is hard to pull off, but if you're at least trying and moving in that direction, you're going to stand a much better chance of having a successful promotion. And it sounds like she's doing a wonderful job doing that. So,
Yeah, I don't see a weakness. I see everything she's doing, you know, with her whole heart and her whole brain, but I see everything she's doing is working. And
right.
it's evident by the crowds, it's evidenced by the amount of skaters they have, the passion they have. It was a fantastic night.
Well, and even the fact that she's got, you know, now this team up north that
There you go. Yeah.
is going to play by their rule set and everything. I mean, it's you know, it speaks it really comes down at that point to passion and heart like you just mentioned, and that's really I think her strongest point, you know, as long as she has passion and her heart is, you know, 100% behind it, then I mean, she'll put everything into it, and that's just and and then the thing is like it's when you have that feeling, none of it's work, none of
Right.
it's work. You just love doing it, and you just do it, and then like when and the payoff is even better because of that. You know, like when you get that crowd, even if it's not as big of a crowd, but they're that loud of a crowd, that means just as much.
Oh,
The
it was
number
intense.
yeah,
And especially,
numbers versus volume. I'll take volume. I mean, like
well,
if they're screaming and they're yelling and they're into it and everything, that means way more than people in the seats, you know, physically. So
and I'm telling you, I asked her about that thing at the end of the last bout. Now, granted, that was an important bout because it led into the championship game November 19th. But there was confusion at the very end. They had the referees huddle, they had players huddling with the referees, and the crowd was like, first of all, it was like dead silent, like just like no idea what was going on. Just, you know, like we thought we saw the end of the bout and then we did it, and it was like, what's going on? And then it like built to this thunderous roar as the time, and it probably only lasted about 5 minutes, but it seemed like forever until they came up with a decision. And then when they finally did, it was okay, we're going to replay it one more, you know, jam session. The crowd went crazy for that session, and it was like on their feet screaming, and the score was literally tied at one point, so it could have gone either way in that last session. And I mean, you know, they don't make it, it's not fake, but man, you could not have written a more intense, exciting finish to that.
yeah, and that's great. That's awesome, and that's what people can look forward to if they go out to see these matches. So, um, obviously, we highly encourage everybody to check it out. We'll have it on our social media as far as when the next event is. John and I will be attending the championship event,
And we
and
forgot to let her give where to find them. You can check out the Chicago Knockouts on Facebook and all social media platforms. Check them out there. All the information is there. We will also be talking about it on future podcasts, as we will be there Saturday, November 19th for the championship bout.
absolutely. Well, with all that being said, John, if somebody wanted to petition you to potentially join their roller derby league,
I'm open.
where could they find you on social media?
Quite easy. Just look for Johngy's Beat anywhere on social media, and you will find me. You will also find me on YouTube. You will find me on the Johngy or Else podcast, available on Spotify and YouTube. But where, oh where, oh where can people find Tommy Else?
Well, John, let me tell you, they can find me on the gram at Tommy_else. They can find me on the twit at Tommy_else. They can find me on the book on the Johngy or Else podcast. They can find me on the tube at the Johngy or Else podcast. They can find me on the tube also at Tommy Else. And they can find our merchandise for the Johngy or Else podcast on the T at prowrestlingtees.com under the johngsbeat.com store, where we have both hoodies and t-shirts available for all of our loyal fans.
And Scoop, there's a big sale coming up. I believe it's 20 or 25% off. It's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So now is your time, or then will be your time to buy merch.
So keep an eye out.
We'll post
All
it on the John GRL's Facebook.
We'll let you know. Yes. Okay. All right, John. Well, for the John G. or Else podcast, I, of course, have been who else but Tommy Else. With me, as always, man on the beat from johngysbeat.com, Mr. John Robleski.
This has been a knockout.